Mike has just taken all my time today, which is fine. I'm not mad about it. Oh gosh, the screen messed up again. Okay, as I'm doing this, does anybody need the QR code? I know I'm annoying, but it's the last time I'm asking because I'm not showing it again to you. I refuse, even if you ask nicely. Deb is raising her hand. You do it once a day. So have you? Everyone in this room has done it once. Okay. If anyone sends me an email about day one, I'm not responding. Just saying. It's recorded. Jackie can confirm that. Okay. Before I get talking about donations and local grant funds, would you like to see a photo of my baby? Okay. So. And this comes with a funny story, because I feel like we need a real palate cleanser before the end of the day. And this is, I look stupid. So you guys will love this one, okay? So this is a suction cup bow and arrow, okay? I come home one day, and he is shooting me with them. And I'm like, this is fun. I'm having a blast. And I literally grab one of these, I lick it, and I shove it on his forehead. He thinks it's the funniest thing ever, okay? This is where I become stupid. I lick one, shove it on my forehead, okay? No. I don't even know if I showed Mike. I did show Ricky and like one other person in our office, but this is what happened. So I put it on, and we are being goofy, okay? Like, we're putting our hands behind our back and going like this, and we're having fights with them, and they're just going like this, okay? So we were creating a core memory moment where my son still, like, this happened 2 weeks before Recorders Conference. I would have been mortified if I would have done this the night before Recorders Conference. Okay, so I do this. My husband looks at me. He's sitting in the chair, and he goes, "That's not a good idea." And I go, "Why?" I'm like, "You have nothing to say, don't know." And he goes, "You're going to get a hickey on your forehead." And I go, "No, I'm not." And so I just go, because I'm right, okay? I'm right in this moment. And we continue to have a blast, okay? My husband goes to get dinner. My best friend shows up at my house. She looks at me funny, but I've known her since I was 5, okay? She says nothing to me. She's at my house for 2 hours. We put my son to bed. Jesse's going out to the barn. And then I said, "Oh my God, I got to show you what we did earlier." And I get, "Stacy Morgan, that's what's on your forehead." And I go, "What?" And I had a giant hickey between my eyebrows, literally taking up the whole center section of my forehead. And then she goes, "We need to figure out how to get rid of it." And I was like, "Yeah, because I got to go to work tomorrow. And like, I got a lot of meetings tomorrow." And she goes, "Okay, so we like try all the things. It's making it worse. It's not better, okay?" So I took a picture before I went to bed. When I woke up the next day, well, I'm sitting there at my desk, and Elise, so Mike is on one side of me, and then Elise is on the other side, our offices, and Elise is there at 6, and she walks in, and I said, "Do you notice anything with my face?" And she goes, "No." And then she goes, "Wait." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "What's that on your forehead?" And I go, "Oh, you can see it." Because I tried to cover it up with makeup, okay? It was not being covered up. It was so purple. It lasted for days because then, so I finally go to lunch with all the directors. I fess up to this of what this thing is on my face. They lose their minds, okay? They lose their minds. And then the next day in a meeting, Beth Goss, she's the Cities and Town director, she messages me as we're having a very serious discussion about pennies. She messages me and goes, "I can see your dot on your forehead and it's making me really happy." And I was like, "Okay, Beth." And I was like, I disregard. So, okay, that's a funny story. We really enjoyed that, right? And then, Marshall didn't get a hickey. That's why I didn't think I was going to get one, okay? He had no hickey on his forehead. To this day, I'm like, it's your young skin, It's my old skin that the hickey just appeared. And when I told my mom, she's like, I almost wet myself. And I was like, yeah, it's really funny. I was like, yeah, to be fair, it's hilarious, okay? I said, in the moment though, and me going, oh God, what if this would have happened the night before Recorders Conference? I would have had to stand on stage and go, as a disclaimer, the thing on my forehead is from a giant bow and arrow with a suction cup on the end, okay? So, okay, that is our palate cleanser, and I'll show you more. I know, it's hilarious, right? Only I would do that. Ricky was dying laughing. We were all laughing, and I was like, if it was you, you wouldn't be laughing. So, okay. So, let's talk donations. So I wanted to give you guys, before we start, public funds. I feel like the most common question we always get is, well, it's not, I collected it as a donation. It's donated funds. And I'm like, no, everything that you receive at the county level into the county treasury becomes public funds. So I wanted to give you guys this statute because we reference it a lot. So 513-420, defines what public funds are. I wanted you guys to have that because everything that I'm talking about in this is any money that is held by the county. So I'm talking about even sheriff's funds, clerk's funds, like money that's held in trust. It's all considered public funds because it's all being held at the county level, okay? So everything is public funds. So whenever we talk about it, that's what it is, okay? So, and that includes fundraising. So, how many counties have had departments get creative with budget cuts and want to do fundraising? Have we seen an influx in this? Okay. Please tell me you guys have policies and procedures, okay? Yes, Stacy, we do. Yeah, okay. Because the worst thing that can happen is you have a department go out, start fundraising. However, nobody else at the county knows about it, including commissioners. Your commissioners and council, auditor, clerk, everyone starts getting phone calls about so-and-so over at the animal shelter is going door to door asking for donations, okay? They're fundraising for a specific purpose. So like, this was not one of the UCGs that Mike went over, but it is our fundraising uniform compliance guidelines. So units which conduct fundraising events must have the express permission of the governing body for conducting the fundraiser, as well as procedures in place concerning the internal controls and the responsibility of the employees or officials. Then it goes into ghost employment. But the main thing that I want to talk about with fundraising is if you are asking, or a department is wanting to ask for money, you are soliciting for donations. This is fundraising, okay? You need to get the permission of county commissioners. This is the governing board in this sense, okay? So commissioners must approve fundraising. Okay, they're the ones that should be over the policies and procedures for fundraising, things like that, because we need to get approval. So then whenever Susie from the animal shelter goes out and asks for money to fund the animal shelter, then commissioners, when they're getting the phone call, they're going, yes, I'm aware. They came and we asked, we approved, they have to follow these guidelines because it's going to be public funds. So you have to make sure that when someone is saying, I want you to donate money, again, dogs, canines, like lots of sheriff's offices are now doing fundraising for canines or to support like animal hospital bills or things like that. Again, most county budgets don't have the money to support significant hospital bills that some canines get in the line of duty. Or if they bite something, there's a root canal or all the other expenses that maybe don't fall under normal county business because not every county has canines. So it's a good way to, again, fundraising is great. It's a way to receive revenue that you don't already have. However, we need to make sure that it's being accounted for appropriately and we have that express permission from the commissioners, okay? So does anyone have questions on fundraising? I will say that some Some county departments want to purchase things with county money and then put like county logos on them and then sell them. Please don't do that. You guys really aren't in the business of buying merchandise to then sell merchandise to make money off of, because what happens if you don't sell all the t-shirts or things like that? So anytime that other departments have given us a call and asked like, hey, can I buy some t-shirts? That's something that typically, we don't have anything in the UCGs that says it's a gray area. So you're not really in that business. So try not to buy things and sell them. That's not your guy. You're not an actual company, okay? You're just the county. But if someone wants to give you donations, that's fine. Again, commissioners can choose to accept those donations, okay? But just don't buy things for resale. That becomes a stickier situation than you guys want to get into. So let's talk about donation. I don't know. Was there a question? Oh, there's one back there. Over there, white shirt. Oh.
Okay, so, and I guess maybe I was thinking of this when you were talking about fundraising, but maybe it's more of in the donations. But like our animal shelter says, hey, we're running low on dog food. Mm-hmm. And the public comes and drops off bags of dog food.
Those would be in-kind donations, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I will get there.
Okay.
Okay. There was one behind you, and I don't know.
Can you do a fundraiser during work hours?
Okay. Mike, I don't know how you feel about this, but is fundraising their normal job duty? Would be my very first question to you.
So if you look at the fundraising statute, actually, it says, I think there's a sentence that says ghost employment must be taken into account, and that's precisely what we have in mind, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want cops, for example, or sheriff's deputies who are supposed to be on patrol saying, well, actually what I'm going to be doing for these 4 hours is raising money, right, for whatever purpose. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very mindful of that. So I guess the way I would answer that is I don't know at what point doing threshold during doing fundraising during regular working hours is going to cross that threshold and sort of trigger that consideration, but there's a point at which it'll happen. So I would recommend staying away from it. That's what I would say.
Ugh, yucky. Yeah, we don't do that. It's like my worst nightmare. That's stuff I have dreams about. You guys calling me and I going, oh, please tell me that didn't happen. Okay, so gifts and donations. Mike, did you go over gifts and donations? I think you did. Did you not?
Quick, but
you did quickly. Okay. So again, you guys can accept gifts and donations. So this is all for UCGs. I'm not going to read to you. However, I do want to touch on, we are all aware we have donation funds. What fund series do they live in? 4,000s. Yay! Okay, you guys are awesome. Those are home ruled funds. Most of the time, you guys will send me emails and say, hey, I have this fund. What can I spend it for? And then you guys probably think I'm being really sassy because my response is, I don't know. What's your ordinance say? But I'm not being sassy because I don't know what you're allowed to use those funds for unless you look at your ordinance. So anything that's in the 4,000s funds, we consider home rule funds, which are set out in 3613. You guys should have a local ordinance adopting this fund, the revenue source that goes into the fund, and the expenditures from the fund. These ordinances can be amended. So a lot of the times you guys probably have some really old home ruled funds that probably have balances in them and you're like, what on earth can we spend these for? These appear to be dormant funds. My best advice would be to say, hey, go look up your ordinance, see what it is. If it's something that you guys have like collected money for, however, it's something that you can't do anymore or you're not doing anymore, you guys can amend your local ordinances and change the use of the funds, okay? Or you can declare them dormant and transfer to general fund. But that's, again, I would recommend thinking, what is that fund to be used for, locating the ordinance and going from there. And I only say all of those things because that's a very common question that we have, including donations. Sometimes you guys open up donation funds, people change offices, and then you don't know what the donation fund can be used for because maybe it was someone fundraised for a very specific project, then the people left, and then you're like, well, the project never went through. Now I have money sitting here. But the question is, with those home ruled funds, if it's donations, is it restricted or unrestricted? Okay, so we need to be very clear, because some of you guys come across those restricted donation funds and they're dormant. They haven't been used in forever. Well, why were the donations collected in the first place? It's hard for me to tell you, yeah, go ahead and declare it dormant, because I just don't know. You guys might have something that you can use the funds for, especially if it's a restricted donation. That ties up the money a lot more because it's a restricted use, okay? I've included on the slide, home rule ordinances must detail, again, the revenue that goes into the fund, allowable expenditures. You guys passed the test. It's in the 4,000 fund range, so you guys are doing amazing. Okay, so acceptance of donations. So gifts and donations must be accepted by the county commissioners. We've already talked about that. County commissioners can decide to not accept a gift or donation. I don't know if this has ever happened. Has that ever happened someplace where you guys were like, we don't want that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's something that you guys don't need.
I've seen it a few, like with really dilapidated like buildings or pieces of land that need remediation. Sometimes they'll say that's more trouble than it's worth. So yeah.
So it's not that you guys have to say yes. Commissioners don't have to say yes. We'll take whatever you want. We're goodwill. No, they can be like, we don't need that, because that's more upkeep, especially if it's a building or a lot or something like that. So they can not accept those gifts or donations. Okay, receipt of donations. Donations must be receipted and deposited into an appropriate fund established and maintained by the county auditor. So this is very important. If the sheriff takes up donations, they can't hold them. They have no statutory authority to hold them in the commissary fund or to hold them in inmate trust, okay? They don't have any authority to hold any other money outside of those two funds. So this is a big one that we have been seeing, is that sheriffs will have donation funds and they keep them. They don't turn them over to you guys. So we've talked to them at length about that. If they do go out and they fundraise, again, they're under the same rules, approved by the commissioners, and then you guys as auditors retain all the money on the funds ledger, okay? Counties must not commingle donated funds with general operating funds unless specifically authorized by law. And we know that that now does happen. Senate Bill 92, right? Because we can put donations in another fund. So that's an example of that. So most of the time, statutory funds are very clear on what revenue can go into the fund. So we just need to be very clear on, if you are accepting donations for a specific purpose, they have their own fund and that's how you account for them. Donations cannot be spent without proper appropriation, even if funds are available, okay? So what do we learn from this? All funds require appropriation, specifically donated funds, because there's no statute that allows for you to not appropriate donation funds, okay? This, I think, is a big struggle that lots of council and commissioners, they're not wanting to appropriate the funds, or commissioners are spending from the fund without appropriation. So it is something that we could audit during audit, because you are required to have an appropriation, okay? And we're kind of getting more strict on that. And I think that's, if I had to say what are my biggest things that I hear from other elected offices, mainly council and commissioners or other department heads, is they're spending without appropriation. They're spending without appropriation. And again, that's something that you guys as auditors, whenever you have a claim for payment, that's something that you're looking at. Is there appropriation to spend? Because appropriation is your permission to spend the money. If you don't have that, my question to you is, how are you going to spend that money then? Council hasn't appropriated it. So you need to make sure you're getting that appropriation unless statute states otherwise, okay? Types of donations, we've talked about these: unrestricted and restricted. Unrestricted, really any county business purpose. Now with Senate Bill 92, community corrections, they could go out, solicit for donations. It could be very general for community corrections uses. It's restricted to a department. However, it's very unrestricted in the use from community corrections. What if we had restricted donations such as canines? That's probably the easiest one to use as an example. But what's the restriction on it? For example, what's the donor saying they want the funds to be used for? Is it just blanket, oh, for any county business purpose? Like some of you will say that around Christmas time, people come in and give them $20, like your office. Like, okay, that's weird, but what do I do with the money? Well, really, you could see it as a donation to the county. They're just giving it to you. It's not necessarily a tip. I would recommend putting in your donation fund, something like that. But if you guys have, how many of you actually have a county fund that's just for county donations? Are there any counties that have a very general one? Monroe has one. I saw a hand over there. Okay. So there are some that have very unrestricted for any county business purpose, but it still follows something very general to like the general fund. What's the business purpose? Any claim that you're going to get to audit is what is the business purpose of the county. So that's what you have to keep thinking about, okay? So now finally to non-monetary in-kind donations. So donations, these are donations that are not cash or depreciable assets. The county can accept non-monetary in-kind donations if allowed by local policy. So my question would be is, what are your policies on this? Like if they want to do dog food, okay, what are you allowed to accept? Some people, I think I received a call recently about bottled water, and I want to say it was like the health department. They're like, can we accept this? Yeah, but you just want to make sure it doesn't like go home with Tina after she leaves for the day. She's like, hey, I really need water. Now I don't have to go to the store. Again, you need to make sure that you have a way to, do you like how I just make up people's names? No offense to any Tinas in the room. But you just have to make sure that you have policies and procedures in place that if you can accept those types of donations, how are you going to make sure that they don't just get up and walk away? Because things like that do sometimes find their way home with other people because, oh, well, it was just sitting there and I didn't know what it was for. I just assumed blah, 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 blah. They give you some type of excuse. So if a county accepts these types of donations, there should be local policies and procedures relating to the inventory and safeguarding of these items. So how many of you guys have policies for accepting types of donations such as these? Does anybody? I mean, it's something we haven't really talked about much, but you guys are kind of, this is starting to be like a, oh, we don't have money for this, but maybe if I go and ask a business, maybe they'll give it to me. And some businesses are like, yeah, we'd love to do that for you. We want to support you. Here's stuff that has no monetary value, or it's like a bag of snacks. And you're like, I'd love to take that home with me. No, I'm just kidding. I'd love to take that back to my office for my girls so we can use it. But you have to make sure, again, that if you are accepting donations like that, you're just doing that in place with your local policies. Something I learn every single day, I'd love to say that I sit down and read uniform compliance guidelines every single night, and I know them forward and backwards, okay? I don't, okay? So whenever Mike said that we had to redo these UCGs, I had to sit down and I was like, okay, I gotta read stuff. Well, one day I answered an email, and I think it's Deborah, and she's not even here right now, but her office asked me something, and she was like, can we accept investments as donations? And before I even went to UCGs, I was like, no, don't do that. That sounds terrible. And I was like, that sounds like not fun. I'm not. And then Mike politely said, actually, you can. And I was like, well, I have been wrong before, like the Hickey incident, okay? Like, I've been wrong. And so he politely was like, hey, there's this section in these uniform compliance guidelines about if you wanted to accept, like, donated stock or other investments. And how many of you actually knew that this was something in our UCGs? Because how many of you do actually get investments donated to you? Can you guys, like, raise your hand? I doubt it happens often. But when it does, I wanted you guys to be aware that there is guidance out there. So I'm not going to read it to you, but we detail out how you can accept these, the processes and procedures you need to have in place, and then how you need to convert that over, okay? So just in case, because sometimes people like to leave you gifts like this, and then you're going, I don't know what this gift is. I don't know what to do with it. So it is in our Uniform Compliance Guidelines, section 1.05. I'm not going to take the time to go through it. We're running short on time. Local grants, I'm going to make it super easy. The fund series we keep these in is the 9,000 range. Local grants should be spent in accordance with the contract and grant agreement. I don't really have anything else. We will have, I don't know what I was going to say. My brain literally just went bloop. But again, local grants, I want you guys to think of very similar to your federal and your state grants. There's a grant agreement. You have to follow those. Same reporting, you keep them in separate funds. It's not that different, but sometimes local grants, they can be cumbersome because, again, you guys don't know what to do with them, how to spend them, especially depending on your guys' agreement that you guys enter into with them and things like that. So I just wanted to include that information on here. And then I wanted to go through audit of claims. I feel like we go in-depthly into this every single time, but you guys are starting to, as departments come to you, they want to spend their money, it becomes a question of, what do I need to look at when I audit the claim? So you need to determine that the claim or voucher is properly itemized and verified and properly supported by invoices or supporting documentation. So if you guys blatantly get an invoice that has very to little information, you guys are allowed to ask more questions. I would encourage you to ask as many questions as you can, because with a claim or an invoice that has very limited information, my first question to you is, how do you know what it's for? If you don't have enough information, how do you know it's an appropriate use of funds, okay? Determine the prices charged are in accordance with any contracts, if applicable. Statutory authority exists for payment of the claim or contract. Verify the accuracy of the claim based on unit price and quantity received, and that total is mathematically correct. I don't know how many times, like, you can go in to audit a claim, and sometimes someone just transposes a number, or someone doesn't total it right, or something like that. And it wasn't caught at the time that the claim was certified. Well, you're looking at something with supporting documentation that doesn't match the claim. The field examiner is going to go, help. What number is it supposed to be? Because your financial record could have something completely different. It could match the invoice, but not match the claim. In that instance, we have two pieces of documents that aren't matching. Why is that happening? So we need to make sure that that's part of the review. Claim must be approved by the appropriate official or department head and must be approved by the appropriate governing body. This is typically the commissioners. Determine that there is sufficient fund balance and sufficient appropriation from which to make the payment. That's just such a big thing right now, because we just need to make sure we have the authority to spend the money from the fund. If we don't have an appropriation, I would recommend you guys saying, hey, I don't see sufficient appropriations. You guys, before I can pay this, you're going to have to go to council and get an additional appropriation. That's totally within your guys' power to do that, okay? And determine the claim has not already been paid. I don't know how many times you guys will call me and be like, hey, we paid something twice. Don't be mad. And I'd be like, I'm not mad. You should go make sure that you get that money back, because that's what they're going to notice. And they're going to go, hey, they paid it twice. And then the FE's going to be over there like, yeah, you paid it twice. And so stuff like that always gets caught, okay? I wanted to include the resources for this presentation. You guys know this stuff. We just need refreshers sometimes. Do you guys have anything? We only have a minute. Or do you guys want to think I'm the best and I let you go a minute early? Okay, bye guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.